Preparing live stream.
This is exciting, eh?
Absolutely. This is actually the first time that I do it live this way.
Yeah.
It's now streaming live. Excellent.
Yes.
Yay, technical difficulty avoided.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Preparing live stream.
Hello, hello.
That's it. Okay, now we're ready. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Genuine Men's Chat Zoom live, as we usually do on a weekly basis now. We are so excited and blessed to have a guest speaker, Godwin Matembe, and I hope he can correct my pronunciation thereafter. But today's topic is a really special one. Given the circumstances with the COVID-19 outbreak and the implications thereafter, money has been and finances have been a really major topic on many people's mind. So that's the topic for today. Let me give you just a quick overview of what the Genuine Men's Chat movement is all about. So the Genuine Men's Chat is a movement consistent of a show, a podcast, workshops, and now weekly Zoom lives that express the often unheard, honest views of men from various backgrounds, cultures, religions, faiths, and life experiences. It's also a rare opportunity for men to have a platform to express their views, their thoughts, their perspectives, and obstacles in life with other men on topics that impact them, their families, their communities, and society as a whole. It's an unfiltered and unadulterated look at what life is like from a man's perspective. And I'm your host, I'm Reham, and I'm also a men's transformational relationship and personal and professional life coach. Welcome. So I'd like to introduce Godwin and one of our genuine men who's also on the call, Alan. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you, Reham.
Oh, my pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you both as our guests today. Let me introduce you, Godwin. You said beautifully that you are a son of an activist and a chemist. You were raised in Uganda, and ever since living in Scotland in 2008, you've been married to Tina, who's a fintech entrepreneur. And you are also an accountant by profession and work in the financial sector, and are a businessman as well, with two lovely children. So welcome to our family, our Genuine Men's family.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm gonna leave it to you to talk about money and finances, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to present to us today.
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and I guess more importantly, to make a contribution to our way of life, to our communities, to the future, because this is the new future, I guess. The way we live and the way we do things, it's beginning to change, and it's looking like what we're doing now, and it's good to have an impact on that. But just to add a little bit of context to my background as you've given it. So I qualified as an accountant many years ago, a professional accountant, and I've also had the opportunity to work for at least the last 20 years in financial services. So even when I was in Uganda, I worked in a bank, and I worked in very many different roles and capacities, right from paying suppliers to preparing management accounts, all the way to relationship management, lending money on behalf of the bank, not myself, and taking customer deposits. And then I also dabbled a little bit in risk analysis and reporting. So I've kind of done a whole breadth of that sort of thing. And then when I came here to the UK, again, I was fortunate enough to work in banking, and my role is mainly around reporting. It has changed throughout the years, but the background is reporting, and it features around management reporting, regulatory reporting, so reporting for regulators, just to show that the bank is doing what it's meant to be doing, in the right way. But I guess beyond that, I've also had the opportunity to get used to money and handling it and having a profile around it, and a persona. So in Africa, we tend to have predominantly cash economies. And, if you have cash, you're king, you can do all sorts of things. But then when I came abroad, I had to go through the whole journey of learning how to deal with money that you don't physically have in your hands, which is this whole credit system. And I've kind of grown or gone different steps on the ladder, right the way from a basic using a debit card to transact, all the way to getting a credit card and managing that, utilizing mortgage products and other complex products that are in financial services. So I kind of feel that I'm able to talk comfortably about money, how to handle it, how to deal with it, how to make it your friend rather than your master, I guess. So that's I wanted to just touch on that, just so that it gives a little bit of background as to why I can talk comfortably about what we're going to be talking about today.
Beautifully presented. Thank you so much, Godwin. That gives us a breadth of your expansive experience in the financial sector and how you are so keenly situated as what I would consider an expert in finance and money advice for our audience today. So thank you for joining us.
Sure.
I'm eager to get us started on getting our audience to really look at what are our thoughts or beliefs about money, what are our emotions and feelings around money, and what are we doing, or what are our actions around the use of money, so that we can really understand this money mindset, and make it our friend, as you were saying, instead of our master. So take it away.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing to kind of appreciate is that everything that we are is a result of our upbringing, and many times we don't really have a say in that, okay? So you get up, you're brought up in this, it may be your home or someone raised you, but you kind of tend to believe that everything that they tell you is what it should be. And in a way, that's their history as well. They were also told that or exposed to that. So right off the bat, we come into this world and then we have this kind of aura or persona that money gets almost lumped onto us. And many times it's okay if it's just you dealing with the money for a time, but things change when your circumstances change. So maybe you start to hang out with other people and there's some financial transactions that need to occur, or maybe you go into a relationship and these are now two different people coming together with two different mindsets about money. And so that's always something that's difficult for people to navigate. And if you think about it, if you don't have the right equipment, let's just use an analogy, I hope it's the right one, but imagine if you needed to cross the ocean if you go out there with a flip board or maybe a paddle board, you're probably going to struggle. But if someone has, even a sailing boat, they'll do slightly better. Okay. So I think, and what I mean by that, to bring it back to the conversation, is you need to appreciate that what you know about money or what you believe about it, much as it's right, or maybe it may be right to you, it may not be all there is to know about it. So you kind of have to have an open mind as a starting point. And I'll kind of give you I'll use a personal story maybe to bring that alive, because like I said, when I was growing up, I didn't have, actually I was a bit shielded from money by my parents, and I don't know why they did it. I never asked them, but we didn't really ever have to deal with money back home. The kids, we just, all you had to do was ask for something and maybe you'd get it or not get it. And that's all we knew about money. And whatever we learned about physically was in classroom, where they teach you about denominations and all that stuff. And then I left, went off to university. I was always prudent anyway, because when I was leaving home to go to boarding school, my parents told me, we don't really have that much time to come hang out with you. You're in school, it's boarding school, you're meant to be studying. We'll come and see you on the visiting days. But apart from that, you gotta make it happen. So I had to learn how to, create a budget, stretch all my things till the next visitation. And I always was able to do that. And then, to cut a long story short, I met my wife, and, we said going out. And then she's from a business background. Back home, her parents were business people. She was so comfortable handling money, dealing with it, even imagining it in significantly larger sums than I could ever even fathom. And so I very quickly had to realize that, first of all, she was my ally, not my enemy when it came to money. After all, we're in a relationship. And then I realized that she knew some things about money that I didn't know. And because I was quite interested in the topic, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to create a situation where I'm a guinea pig and I'll learn from this lady. And maybe over the course of our lifetime, I'll get better at dealing with money. So that's kind of what I mean about having an open mind. You have to be open to learning from people that know something that you don't know. And that's been very, very helpful for me over the years. Certainly with money, but even if you think about it, all other areas of my life, that's the approach I've taken. So I want to pause there for a second, and maybe because I know that I don't want to ramble on. I'll leave it there for a second and, get you to maybe respond to that or tell me your thoughts as well about that, Reham. Oh, Alan could chip in as well.
I'll reassure you, you're not rambling.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
You're not rambling. No. And it's beautiful to hear, your story with your wife, and how amazing your open-mindedness was with Tina around money, because the fact that you were willing to have an open mind, like you're saying, a beginner's mindset to money. And we talk about muscles, emotional muscles, with our genuine men, and one of those muscles is humility. So the fact that we can learn from anyone, regardless of age, background, race, gender, whatever, is a beautiful life skill. And that's something that I know we try to implement in, children as well as adults. So I commend you for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to share, before we move on, do you want to share a little bit about what it was like for those of our audience members who are just about to start a business or just thinking of setting up a budget? What was it like for you in your head, in your experience, with overcoming, any money mindsets that you might have come with? And then what was it like creating a budget and stretching your expenses and really understanding the value of money as a means?
Yeah, yeah. That's such a very good question. I'm going to backtrack a bit and then I'll bring it to the question. One of the things that I really wanted to say is that for people of my, community, not even generation, my community, we tend to struggle. And I speak for my community because I don't know very well about other communities. This is not something we've spoken about, but sometimes you kind of more inward looking than outward looking. And I know for sure that people of my community, we tend to struggle a lot with, first of all, acknowledging that other people know better than us. And it's even more difficult for us to acknowledge that if those people are women, or they're younger than us. And because of just those two barriers, you find that our society is held back so much because people are not willing to tap into the resources that they have. So that's something that I really wanted to say now, because by just unlocking your mind around those two areas, you can really flick the switch from living in darkness to actually seeing where you're going and being very clear about it. Now, having said all that, I mean, I've always had that type of approach because it so happened that much as I was the eldest at home, I was the youngest around my classmates. I went to school quite early. And so as a result, I was also the smallest. So many times I had to learn from others. I had to be able to get help from others just because I couldn't figure it out by myself. So over time, I realized from an early age that it was okay to be able to get help, one, and two, people were willing to help me if I was able to ask for the help. Okay, so having said all that, one of the things that I said earlier was that my parents did not really involve me in financial issues at home. I was kind of well catered for. Everything I needed that was within reason and reach, I got. And so I didn't really know anything about how to deal with money leaving home. My wife knew how to deal with it from the perspective of applying it and using it, maybe to some extent making it, but in a situation of, I wouldn't say abundance, but availability, right? When the money was there, it was able to be utilized. Now, when we moved here, bear in mind, I moved here beginning of 2008, been doing really well in Uganda, but we thought we want to experience the world. So, hey ho, didn't even think about the weather, just hopped onto a plane and came to Scotland, which was fine for the first few months. And then the financial crisis started to pinch really, really hard, as a result of the situation. I was working in financial services. As a result of whatever was going on in financial services, I found myself out of work very, very quickly. Yes, we'd had some money that we'd been saving, and that was able to keep us going, but only barely. And then to make matters a little bit more interesting, my wife was pregnant and we're expecting our daughter. So when you bring all that together, yeah, not very rosy. But over time, we thought we kind of sort of managed along the way okay, until, the baby came and my wife wasn't able to work anymore and the savings had run out. So, hey, we were forced to make this budget, okay? And we had to do some really, now looking back, I can smile about them, but going through them, it was not easy. I mean, a very, very difficult situation to go through is if you imagine yourself in a store, you've gone to buy stuff, you fill up your trolley, you get to the till, they ring the till, and you don't have the money for them, and you have to take stuff out the trolley and put it back, right down to the bare basics. So we got to a point where if it wasn't for the baby, it wasn't a priority, that kind of, but the good thing about such situations, even if you're forced into it, once you're in it, you have to decide, the only way is up, because that was like a bottom, and until you get to a bottom, you're always gonna be skirting around the issue. But once you get to bottom and there is nowhere else to go lower than that, then you're like, okay, fine, I know where I am. The only way out of here is up. I'm not gonna fly because I don't have wings, so I have to take it step by step. Okay. Now, the good thing about living abroad, or maybe in this era, let me extend this to other economies. The good thing about this era is the internet. Anything that you need, you can find on the internet, if you're not bold enough to ask someone else. So all we did was just very easily budgeting on Google, and you get all sorts of things. There's audios, there is write-ups and whatever. But at least that gave us access to sort of take those first baby steps. You kind of, because I have a financial background, I understand the whole thing about income and expenses. But for people who don't, who are not comfortable with that, there's resources there that also show you in very basic language, income is what you're earning, expense is what you're spending. You kind of need to have more than what you're spending. If you're not earning, then you need to figure out how to, one, earn, two, stretch what you're earning, cut back on expenses, that sort of thing. So you can learn all those things online. And then the other thing I spoke about earlier is just the whole thing about utilizing the resources. If you're in a relationship, bear in mind, remember that you're on the same side. So if your wife or husband, well, this is a men's thing. So if your wife is trying to have a conversation with you about money or finances or resources, don't get upset. Don't look at her as the enemy. Kind of open up and say, listen, I really don't know what we're going to do, but what do you think? What can we do? How can we get help? And that way, two heads are better than one. You come up with a solution. And the first solution may not work. You also need to be willing to go again if the first one doesn't work. Because guess what? I told you the example about where we had to take things out of the trolley. That could only work for a while. And then I had to kind of think, okay, I'm not working. I've tried job applications, and in the field that I feel I can make the best use of my time, energy, and resources, but there's nothing coming out of there. So I need to widen my net. So I started to think about other things out with what I thought I knew. I had to open myself up to learn new skills that I didn't know. So, again, this is typical of African people. We don't tend to know how to do things for ourselves. We get help. If you need to fix a table, you're not gonna try. You just go and look for someone a carpenter. And just because that's the way of life that we have. Now, some people in Africa don't do that. Don't get me wrong. They're able to fix their own things. But that was my background. And I was forced to learn how to pick up things, to learn how to do things for myself, to open up my net, to consider other things that maybe if it was up to me, I wouldn't have picked as an income generator. And that got me through those first rounds of getting off the bottom where we were. Okay. Now that's kind of the basic level, but as you know, with life, you always want to improve. You always want to go somewhere better than where you are. So the budget was really good because it forced us to, first of all, getting to bottom forced us to appreciate where we were. Utilizing simple skills like budgeting helped us to make the equation balance, or at least come out better on the income side than on the expenses. The other thing that we then had to do was, okay, how are we going to get around this situation of just staying close to the bottom? We need to figure out a way to rise up. And this is where, I can't say this often enough, but just utilizing the resources around you is mind-boggling what it can do for you. So like I said, my wife, she has this whole business background, and once we had stabilized our situation, we'd been looking online and seeing how things were. She's like, one thing that I've actually seen a lot of online seems to suggest that people who are homeowners spend less household income than people who are renting. And that's because they pay less for their mortgage than they would pay in rent. Okay, now that's kind of a whole different mindset there, because for someone to almost imagine that they can own a home when they don't even have, 50 quid on a savings account was quite a challenge for me to think about. And initially I was like very hesitant to even think along those lines. But then, once you go through one or two cycles of, yeah, we're okay, but we're not really where we want to go, and we're not getting there anywhere sooner. Again, I had to open up my mind. I had to revisit that whole position of, okay, I don't have the answer for this. I need help. And I've got a suggestion here. The least I can do is look at it, consider it, shoot it down all I want, but use facts, not perceptions. Okay, that's another thing there. A lot of times, like I said, people have influenced us through their thinking and their words, and we almost take that as facts, but actually it's an opinion. It's not a fact. If you go out and find out. So through her conversation, I challenged myself to go and get the facts, and I found that what she was saying was right. So then the question became, okay, you know very well that if you stay in this situation where you're renting, you're gonna spend a lot more than you could spend if you become a property owner. So then the question became, how do I become a property owner? And then we went away. And one thing that has helped us a lot as a family, and certainly as an individual who is trying to be better than I am every day, is even though physically and mentally I may not be ready to do something, I'm always open to hearing about it, to learning about it, to reading about it. So even though we're not ready to become property owners, we started to look at properties. We started to, find out the whole process around buying property, becoming mortgage payers as opposed to rent payers, how all that worked, what sort of things you needed to have in place to demonstrate that you were able to pay the mortgage. Because, when you go into a mortgage situation, you have to pay. You live in the house and your name is on the mortgage paperwork, but actually it's not until you finish paying the mortgage that it actually belongs to you. So, by the time we came to actually sign on the dotted line, we already knew a lot more around this, and that was because we started the journey even before we were ready. And that's one thing I would encourage people to do. The moment something strikes you, either you think about it or someone says it and you don't know enough about it, go out and find out the facts about it. You know, take the interest to even find, I've kind of now got the approach to say, I will spend a little bit of time just to find out one or two facts, even though I know I'm not gonna do anything with this now. Let me just find out about it. A couple of facts. I don't need to know the whole encyclopedia about it, but a couple of facts which I can, you know, stand by if someone came and asked me one or two things. So we did that, and that allowed us to be comfortable when the time came. You know, we even took the step of, so this is something that we like to do because we are all dreamers, and you know, when you come out here, you almost get a chance to live out your dreams in a way, because the difference between living here and living back home is a lot of people, when they're gonna become property owners, they'll buy their own land, then they'll buy their own materials, then they will build, okay? And that's just one unit. But here, you know, properties, there's that type of property as well, but the majority of properties are built on a, you know, bulk basis by builders, and they're quite keen for you to come and see what they've built, right? So what we did was, every time we had a chance during the weekends, you know, we started to go and look at properties. Now, initially, we just wanted to see whether it was okay to do that. We were not even sure, because when they say, oh, you know, you're walking past a building site and they've got a number there and say, come see us. We're like, really? Is that really true? Can we do that? And so we kind of first tested the water with that. And then over time, we realized that, okay, so we know the budget we think we can afford, but it doesn't look like there's any sign on our forehead saying this is the budget, so therefore only look at these properties. So we stepped out a little bit, become a little bit of dreamers on some sort of something, because we started to look at properties that we felt were outside our budget. You know, you kind of think maybe I can afford £100,000 house. And then here we are looking at houses ranging from 250 all the way to £1 million. And you're thinking, why are you even doing that? You're wasting time. No, that's not wasting time. That's kind of, first of all, in your mind, it registers that you are ready to take that step. It's almost making something, the word for it, I think, is visualization, but bringing a visualization to life is when you step out there. But part of getting out there and looking at these things, you're having conversations with people, and we started to learn some of the ways in which we could actually still be able to get those properties that we thought were outside our budget, just by allowing ourselves to see them and think about them. And that has been a really amazing journey. It has allowed us to change our situation. When we bought our first property, some of our friends just could not believe it. They thought that we had gotten money from our parents and were not being very clear about that. They just could not believe that we'd saved up enough for a deposit, that we'd actually gone and gotten a mortgage, just because none of us in our community at the time had done something that bold. But what we then thought, okay, you know, let's get away from this belief, disbelief. The only way you can help someone over a barrier is by showing them the way. And that includes holding hands and, you know, encouraging them. So that's been something that we've taken on as a journey the last few years, because it's always good to progress and do all these nice things for yourself as an individual, as a family, but you cannot enjoy it alone. I don't know anyone who enjoys being alone. Or, you know, even if you go to the top and there was no one who was there to cheer you on, it would be empty. So what we thought we'd do is, okay, we'll help people to do different things. Now, what we try to do is a needs basis. So if someone came to me and they started to talk to me about some of the challenges they're facing, I've got friends who come and say, look, man, I don't know how I'm gonna go through this month. I'm struggling, I've got some financial issues. My council tax is behind, basic things, right? So the first thing I need to do is, relate to them. Some of these challenges I'm able to understand because I've gone through them. And so I can relate. I understand, I've been there. The second thing I need to be able to do, and what I try to do, is to create hope for the future. And again, I've been there and I've come out of it. So therefore, if I did it and I could do it, you can do it as well. There's no difference between you and me, and there's nothing special about me except the belief that I can do it, and also the desire to do it, okay? Which I believe you have. Maybe you just haven't tapped into it, okay? And then the third thing is just start from the basics, Okay, so you're struggling, you don't have enough. Let's first know, what's coming in, what's going out. Let's start there. Because once you can see things written in front of you, then you can decide, okay, what's urgent, what's important, what's nice to have, what's a waste. And then once you can bucket those things up, quickly you change your situation. And then there's no joy beyond seeing someone's face light up once they can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they know that it's not an oncoming train. It's, they're coming out of this deep, deep darkness into a better situation. And then we just build on from there. I'll hold your hand, I'll work with you, I'll help you do your budgeting. You're not gonna believe this, but once this happened to me many years in university, many years ago, I had this friend who he was a good man, but he just loved life too much. So every time he had money, he just thought of all the good things. He didn't think about his bills. He didn't think about his fees. And a couple of times I had a conversation with him. And one time he said to me, look, this is a big difficulty for me. I can't deal with this, especially when this money comes. And so I asked him, how do you think I can help? Because I would like to help. And he said, I'm going to get in touch with my mom, who is my sponsor. I'm going to introduce you to her. I'm going to ask her to entrust you with my money, so that every time I need something, I'm happy to come and have a conversation with you and justify, because maybe you and I were the same, but I find difficulty having this kind of conversation with my mom, So that's what I did. I almost, as a student, I was responsible for another student. So every time his money came, it came straight to me, and then we'd sit down and work out the budget. And once we've agreed it, he said, okay, I'm happy with all this, but I don't feel strong enough to keep the money. You keep it. And when I need any, I'll come to you, and you can deal with fees and all that sort of thing. And so that's the kind of journey that, I take people on, all the way up to when now you find that someone is comfortable being with money, talking about it, spending it responsibly, that you then say, okay, let's start to look beyond today and tomorrow. How can we create a situation where maybe next year, 2 years down the road, you'll be in a better position, you have a little bit more money hang about, and that's been my journey, and I hope that I'll be doing a lot more of that going into the future, especially in the situation that we're in right now.
Absolutely. Godwin, your story and all of the stories that you've personally experienced, and you and your family, Tina, and you together have really shed light on the story of so many other people currently in that situation now.
Yeah.
Because of the coronavirus. I mean, learning how to budget again, you know, especially when you do it for work, but sometimes taking it home and doing it for personal budgets. Some people might not find it transferable as a skill. And so recognizing that that is essential, having the value of family to motivate you, or find another motivator, whatever that may be, but recognize that we can create hope for ourselves, and to believe and to desire um, change or improvement or growth is something that is so powerful. That itself can also be a motivator, is what I'm hearing from you, to look at the facts and not just the thoughts. Look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. Really use the numbers, as you were saying, to create an opportunity to get us out of this deep darkness that some people are very much in, especially having been furloughed or found redundant, or made redundant or fired completely, or are without a job altogether. And the debts are increasing or potentially on pause for some people. But the reality of the situation is money is no longer a means right now. We're not using it as a servant because of the circumstances. It becomes it becomes the master. So it's really interesting, the intricacies of your story and your background, and how it's so relatable for each and every one of us in so many different ways, to see ourselves in that, and to know that, you know, we can come out of this just like you have. We can also come out of it and be good for it. So this concept of creating a financial plan that you're talking about, we have just a few more minutes to talk about it. Could you do you have any, like, points as to what you'd like our audience to do for this time till next week, to actually put into action a financial plan for themselves, so that they can, if they're, you know, out of work, or they've got just a short amount of time before their expenses run out, or, I mean, I'll leave this with you. There's so much that can be done.
I get it. I get it. Now, I appreciate we have a short time, but the first thing that I want to say is the situation that we're in right now is slightly different. It's slightly more complex than the last one, which was 2008. But actually, yesterday I was on a call with some other business leaders, and what one guy commented and said that this has actually been the longest time that we've gone without a crisis of this nature. What they tend to do is happen maybe on a 10-year cycle, if you're lucky, 12 to 15. So why am I saying that? For sure, something like this or worse is going to happen again 10 years down the road, okay? We don't know what it is, but we know it will happen. That's a good thing to know. But what's even better to know is that we will always have those cycles of up and down, up and down. We cannot go down without going up. And likewise, we can't go up without going down. Otherwise, we'll just be on a plateau, which you don't want to be on. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we will definitely get out of this. There is no doubt about that. So everyone should have a hope and an expectation. Now, I don't want to get religious or anything, but one of the books that I read says that the Creator, whoever you believe him to be, has good plans for each and every one of us. And he has, one of his plans is to create a hope and a future for us. Another plan is to make sure that our expectations are not cut off. Now that's a guarantee. So everyone should have hope for the future and know that whatever they expect, whatever good things that they expect, they're going to come to pass. If they don't expect, they won't get anything. So they should start to expect. Okay.
So it's about people's expectations then. It's really using your brain and your heart and connecting them to really plan and believe in a plan your plan, our plan, a higher plan, whatever the plan is, just to have that hope to grab onto. Absolutely, yes.
And then building on that, we've spoken about the numbers and how to, how get back to the basics. Basically, know where you are now. What do I have? What do I owe? What do I owe on long term? What do I owe on a regular basis? How am I figuring out how am I going to cover it? Okay. And then secondly, on top of knowing where you are, is create almost baby steps. Now, a good baby step in finances is 90 days. It's a baby step, but it's also a massive step. But it gives you enough runway to see a little bit into the future. So 90 days is 3 months down the road. Just have a plan for the next 3 months, a financial plan, a plan to get out of debt, a plan to learn something new, and this is really important. When our circumstances change, we're almost hit by shock, and we are caught up in some sort of, my kids call it a brain freeze when they eat a lot of ice, but we almost get that, okay? And you're frozen there. You know where you are, you know what's going on, but you don't know how to move out of it, and you're not thinking about that. So a good way to get out of that is to get knowledgeable about other things, okay? The other thing we spoke about is looking forward. When you look forward down those 90 days, that gives you motivation to go and do something. If you know that down 90 days, I've got something I need to do, or I'm planning that this will be covered off in 90 days, then you're kind of working towards that. You have a target, then you're open-minded, you're learning new skills. A big thing that is, I'm passionate about now, I'm encouraging people to figure out. Right now we're forced to work from home, but hey, what if you could choose to work from home? That's a good opportunity. We've all been forced now to be home, but we all always talk about wanting more freedom in our lives, being able to work as and when we want, wherever. This is a good opportunity to figure out how to do that. Now, there's lots of materials about that. I'm sure one of these days we'll converse about different opportunities that are out there. But again, this comes down to what's out there. Instead of spending as much time on social media and the news, if you give yourself an hour or two every day just to learn something new, even if it's from a book, even if it's online, even if it's through a conversation, you ask people around you, what are you doing to manage this situation? How are you getting out of this? Or someone has come across, has thrown an opportunity at me. What do you think about it? I'm considering it, but I don't know all the things I should think about. And those are some of the conversations that I'm happy to get involved in for whoever is needing that kind of help. I'm doing the same for myself as well, because right now I work in financial services, but I've also got my own business interests. I've got young kids and I want to see them more than I see them when I'm working. So I'm trying to figure out new ways to live this life and to make it even better than it is right now. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. Just, I think those are three things. So first of all, look forward, have hope, and have an expectation. A good one, preferably a big one, if you can. The bigger, the better, And then the second thing is know where you are, just exactly clarify how much you have coming in, going out, and what your options are. And then the third thing is create a 90-day plan, and with that plan, try and put certain milestones along the way. So maybe you could say, you know what, I've got some expenses that I have that I feel are maybe luxury right now. Let me try and work on getting rid of some of those. A big one is men love sports. A lot of men have these sports channels that they pay for that maybe they watch 1 out of 10. So you kind of think, okay, should I really be watching that much sport anyway? Maybe I should be playing it with my kids, not watching it on TV. So things like that. So if you have a target to say, okay, I'm going to try and deal with some things like that. Now, sports is a touchy thing, and I don't want to offend anyone.
We're in
But
Scotland.
it's just an example, right?
Yeah.
And then the bonus point there is open your mind. Open your mind. Someone said that the mind, and this is a beautiful quote, but I think it's on point. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. If you don't open your parachute, you're gonna sink down, break a few bones before you hit the ground. So that, have an open mind about ideas, about solutions. Now, that's not to say go and do every silly thing that you get told, but at least consider it and look at the bonuses and why it could work, not why it won't work. That's my advice, and that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
So just a quick, because we don't have much time, I want to give you a quick context where I come from. So I come from Poland, from a working class family, low income, and I came to Scotland 10 years ago. And now I'm actually, what I hear from you, it's very relatable, and I'm really impressed about the story with your wife. I'm in a relationship for a year now with a girl that is much better with money than me, and I learned from her. And it's actually an amazing experience to really share the thoughts about money and how and open up and actually see that things can be done differently. Especially because my parents or school or the place where I come from, they don't teach you about money. And even though she's also coming from like a low income family, she has a completely different style and approach. So what is happening is that we get to talk it through and make things right, compared to like maybe there are a lot of couples or marriages that they struggle because they don't talk about it. So I totally love your points, like have big expectations, and I do have big expectations. So despite the fact that I come from the low income, I want to take my income high. And I know where I am, because over the past couple, maybe 3 years, I've been looking regularly into my expenses and my income, and I know for a fact that just writing it down and having an idea what's going where, it makes all the difference. It's just writing it down, seriously. Like I've done this several times where I would write down everything I'm spending money on, and for example, I would find out that I'm spending £100 per month on coffee, in coffee shops. And I'm thinking, is it nice to have, or is it a necessity? And can I lower that? And like, for me, it might be a very, like, way too much, like £100 on a coffee per month. Come on, you can do better with this money. So I'm definitely gonna try the 90-day plan to improve things, kind of like follow your advice. But there's a thing that I've been struggling for years. And for example, my girlfriend doesn't have that problem because of her approach. She's got lots of savings, and she's been always ready for the rainy day, and she never borrowed money in her life. I come from a family which borrowing money from someone was on everyday basis. My mom used to work in a pawn shop, and she would lend money to people through her job, which was a common thing. And to me, I grew up around this, and I learned the best way to solve a problem is to borrow some more money. And it developed in a big problem and a huge debt for me that I'm completely aware. And since I was starting a business over the past 2 years, I've been starting up on my own. I've borrowed a lot of money for myself. It's over £10,000, and obviously not having education or any knowledge about finance and money in general can create a lot of burden when you borrow a lot of money. And especially when you have this habit, which is whenever I get into a problem, I just borrow some more, So my question is, if you worked with people who had problems with debt, and this chronic, kind of desire to borrow more, get more, solve every problem with borrowing more, do you see any solutions for that kind of, like, to solve this problem, to find a cure for this behavior? Because it's a habit. It's a habit of, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go and borrow money. I cannot borrow from the banks. I'm going to borrow from friends. I'm going to borrow from my family. I'm going to borrow from wherever, just to plug the hole.
Yeah. No, that's a valid point. And like you've said, it's about background. And yes, you look at it as a habit, but it's a way of life for you. So that's okay to be like that. Okay. What I would do is, again, if we go back to the basics, just like you've done with your income and expense, you can do a similar situation, similar exercise with your borrowings, okay? And you can list, just write down, first of all, you already know the debt you have, okay?
Yeah.
But in terms of looking forward, you can list, just a second. You can make a list of all the people who tend to help you with financial services, okay? And right along each of them, you could say, this is the benefits of having this relationship with this person, and this is the disadvantage, okay? So obviously for people like banks and financial services, whatever you borrow, you're gonna pay a cost for it, okay? So it's very easy. You're gonna say, okay, I'm borrowing £100, I need to do this. Am I going to earn anything from it? No, but I'm gonna flip that, I'll pay 10% interest. So in actual sense, I need to justify whether that's a worthy spend, that 10%, not the £100, because that's not yours, but you're spending 10 quid. So that's gonna go into your expenses. And then you say, okay, is this a need to have or just nice to have, okay? And then for the other people that are not necessarily gonna charge you interest, there's a relationship cost, People will start to avoid you, not take your calls, or in some instances, talk behind your back. They may smile at you, and then you're thinking, do I really want to have this kind of relationship? Okay, so that's kind of the way you'll deal with the one going forward, I think, as a starting point, okay? The second thing, which is also similar, but maybe a bit more proactive, is just as you're innovative around the borrowing, you could be just as creative around income generation. So you've said your significant other is very good at saving. It looks to me like yours is the earning of the income, right?
Yes.
Now, even though you've got all these nice ideas and you're funding them by debt, you could figure out a way to fund them through a source of income, a revenue stream. And there's loads and loads and loads. And, that conversation is quite long, but that's another thing you could do going forward. And then for the ones that you already have in place, there's many ways you could deal with it. But one thing that's very, very helpful that works, I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Dave Ramsey, but he talks about—
I've heard his book, Money Makeover, Total Money Makeover.
So he talks about this debt snowballing technique is really powerful. That's very, very powerful. So that's something that I would definitely do. Here, how you would approach it is, maybe if you're going to be borrowing from banks, you could consolidate all your debt onto one interest-free card. We're lucky that we get interest-free cards here. And, they tend to give you a long period, depending on when. The market's a bit hazy now, but once it opens up, there'll be opportunities. They may still be there for you to get a card where you can put all your debt on, and then you have a certain period where it's interest-free. And then, as you're dealing with that on so that's you stopping whatever you're borrowing, and you're dealing with this proactively, say give yourself 3 months and say, in 3 months time, I'm gonna go halfway down this debt, because you can't cover it in all of that period, but at least you can cover a percentage of it. And then as you're covering it, you're thinking, okay, so what could I do that would bring me this revenue so that I don't need to go and borrow it at a cost? And it's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you open your mind to it, just as you kind of you open your mind to who is going to lend you the next time, you can open your mind to what idea can I come up with? And, you know, I kid you not, you'll come up with a couple of ideas, and some of them are really going to be good. You know, at least 1 out of 3, 2 is going to be the killer, and it will take you out of it.
And
Awesome.
we're going to have you back here.
I hope that answers you.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
We're going to have to bring you back, Godwin, to address just that money makeover approach of income generation, revenue streams, because I think that's a really big one. And then debt, coming out of debt, and how to manage all of that, especially given the circumstances.
Didn't get a chance to talk much about that, but yeah, that's a good tool.
Well, there's so much to cover, and you've just kind of, you know, covered just a bit of the surface of what the impact of money and finances have on our lives on a daily basis, personally or professionally. So thank you, Godwin, for accepting to be our guest speaker. And maybe we could offer an opportunity for this to continue on a more regular basis, and maybe even a 90-day program for the men to learn how to look at their finances, be it from a revenue generation perspective or a revenue management perspective, and we'll be talking to each other and seeing if we could do that. We will be posting a money mindset quiz in the description of the video, so check out that and fill it out and give us your feedback. Come to the Genuine Men's Chat Facebook group. If you haven't join the Genuine Men's Facebook group and have these discussions with other men in the groups, and pay attention to all that's coming up in the next few months. We've got an amazing host of guest speakers and our men that are going to be participating. Thank you, Alan, for your question and for your participation and showing up to this amazing opportunity to free our minds and free our pockets of the imprisonment that money and finances could cause on us if we perceive it in the wrong way. Till then, our motto is many men, many conversations. Have you taken your seat at the table? Thank you.
Thanks, Rio.
Awesome. I've finished the recording.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
1 second. 1 second.